It is early morning in ancient Rome. The city lies beneath a thin veil of mist, its rooftops still sleeping under the weight of night. The great marble temples are silent, their shadows stretching long across the cobblestones. Even the Tiber moves quietly, a slow, dark ribbon winding through the heart of the city, reflecting the faint shimmer of the stars above. The streets are quiet now, still draped in the last shadows of night. Only the faint echo of a distant footstep, the murmur of a watchman turning his patrol, reminds the world that life continues here, even in its sleep. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once and is silent again. The air is cool, still carrying the scent of last night's fires, the mixture of ash, oil, and the faint sweetness of olive wood. Before most of the city has stirred, a single flicker of light glows behind a shuttered window. It's easy to miss, a small trembling flame in a city of thousands. But inside that light, the day has already begun. It comes from a small bakery, a taberna tucked into a narrow lane, its walls darkened by years of smoke and heat. Inside, the air is already heavy with warmth. It hums softly with the breath of the oven, a deep, steady heartbeat at the center of the room. The glow of the fire paints the walls with slow-moving gold, catching on hanging tools, on wooden trays stacked neatly by the door, and on the white dust that hangs in the air like fog. In that glow, a man moves carefully through the dimness, his silhouette softened by the haze of flour. His name is Lucius. He is a baker, one of thousands scattered through the city, and though his life will never be written in marble or ink, it carries a rhythm older than any empire. He rises before dawn every day, as his father did, and as his father's father once did before him, while senators still sleep behind thick walls and soldiers dream of distant campaigns. Lucius wakes to the simplest of duties, to feed the city. He works slowly, without haste. His hands know their purpose better than his thoughts do. They stretch, fold, and shape the dough in silence. Each motion is patient, precise, and born from years of practice. There is no glory here, no audience, no applause, only the quiet satisfaction of creation. The world outside remains still, unaware of him. Yet in this moment, his small taberna holds the first signs of life in Rome. The faint crackle of fire, the rustle of flour, the creak of wood. These are the city's first sounds of morning. Soon Rome will awaken. The streets will fill with voices, the markets will shout, the clatter of hooves and sandals will echo between the walls. But for now, in this gentle pause between night and day, the city belongs only to a few, to the bakers, the torchbearers, the water carriers, the quiet hands that prepare the world before it stirs. Today we'll follow one of them, not through battles or grand feasts, not through emperors or triumphs, but through the gentle rhythm of ordinary work, the quiet heartbeat of a city held together by bread and patience. This is a day in the life of a Roman baker, a story not of power, but of persistence, a story whispered in the warm light of dawn when Rome still dreams, and the world is soft enough to listen. The night still clings to the edges of the city. Rome sleeps beneath a sky of faint silver, where the first pale thread of light has not yet touched the rooftops. In the deep quiet before dawn, a single window glows behind a wooden shutter. It belongs to a small bakery, tucked between the narrow lanes of the Subura, one of the oldest neighborhoods of the city, where the streets are close and uneven, and the air already carries the faint scent of ash. Inside, the warmth is beginning to stir. Lucius, the baker, has been awake for some time. He does not need an alarm or a bell. His body has learned the rhythm, the hour when the stars still shine, but the first birds are beginning to shift in the eaves. This is the hour that belongs to him, quiet, unhurried, before the city opens its eyes. He rises from his straw mattress, the room dim except for the small flame of a clay lamp on a wooden stool. The light flickers across the uneven wall, showing the outline of a shelf, a jug of water, a pair of sandals coated in fine dust. The air smells faintly of old dough, sour and warm, and smoke from the oven below drifting up through the cracks in the floorboards. Lucius moves slowly, careful not to wake the apprentice who sleeps in the corner. He dresses simply, a linen tunic belted at the waist, sleeves rolled to the forearms. There is a whiteness clinging to the fabric that will never wash out, the memory of flour worked into the weave by years of kneading. He ties his sandals, rubs his hands together for warmth, and descends the short wooden stairs into the bakery below. The workshop is small, low-ceilinged, with soot-blackened walls. A single arched oven dominates the far side, built of clay and stone, its mouth wide and dark. Beside it stands a long wooden table, scored and worn from years of work. The flour bins rest against the wall, covered with cloth. A handful of clay lamps sit on the shelf, their oil nearly spent. Lucius sets one on the table and trims the wick with a knife. The flame brightens, revealing the soft dance of dust in the air, tiny particles rising and falling, catching the light like snow. He draws a breath. The scent of the place is familiar, old ash, wheat, and yeast. It is the scent of his life. He begins by checking the oven. Last night, he left embers banked beneath a layer of ash to hold a trace of heat. Now, he stirs them gently with an iron rod. A dull red glows beneath the gray surface. He feeds the fire with thin pieces of olive wood, dry and aromatic. Soon, the faint crackle of flame fills the room, a soft breathing sound against the silence. While the oven awakens, Lucius measures his ingredients. The flour is kept in a large wicker basket, covered with linen to protect it from insects and dust. It comes from grain imported from Egypt, milled in one of the great water-driven mills on the Janiculum Hill. He runs his fingers through it, coarse, heavier than modern flour, speckled with tiny fragments of bran. He knows its feel by touch alone. He can tell by the drag of his palm whether the batch is dry or holds too much moisture from the air. From a jug, he pours water, cool and slightly cloudy from the clay. He adds a pinch of salt, scooped from a small bowl, and finally the most precious ingredient, a lump of dough saved from yesterday, the ferment. It carries the wild yeast that gives each loaf its rise. It is alive, breathing faintly beneath its crust. He tears it open and stirs it into the mixture. The scent changes immediately, sharp, sour, earthy. He works with his hands, pressing, folding, turning, until the dough gathers into a rough mass. There are no words spoken, no rush, only the soft sound of palms striking dough, a steady rhythm like the pulse of the city itself. Lucius works slowly, feeling the texture change under his fingers. He does not look at the dough. He listens to it, the way it sighs when pressed, the way it resists and then yields. He sprinkles more flour, folds it again. The table creaks under the motion. When the dough begins to smooth, he divides it into smaller portions and covers them with a damp cloth to rest. Outside, the faintest light touches the upper walls of the city. The sky has softened to gray. A rooster calls somewhere in the distance. Lucius moves to the doorway and opens the wooden shutter just enough to let in a breath of cool air. The street beyond is still half asleep, an empty stretch of cobblestone, glistening faintly from the dew. A cat moves along the wall, silent, vanishing into shadow. He returns to his table and begins shaping the dough. Each loaf will feed a family, or a soldier or a slave. He divides, rounds, flattens, marks the surface with a small incision. Each loaf must bear a mark, a stamp pressed into the top to show the baker's seal. The stamp is made of terracotta, carved with the symbol of his workshop, a simple sun with 4 rays. When the bread reaches the market, the mark tells the buyer where it came from and who stands behind its quality. For a moment, Lucius pauses. He looks at the rows of pale dough lined up before him. There is a quiet satisfaction in their sameness, their calm order. The city outside might be chaotic, full of noise and ambition. But in here, time is slow and deliberate. He finds peace in repetition, in knowing that his hands will perform the same motions tomorrow, and the day after that. When the oven reaches the right heat, he tests it with a small handful of flour. He tosses it onto the stone floor. If it burns too quickly, the fire is too fierce. If it turns brown slowly, it is ready. The surface blackens at the edges and then settles to a golden hue. Perfect. He sweeps the ash from the mouth of the oven and slides in the first round of loaves using a long wooden peel. The movement is practiced, fluid and unhurried. He closes the mouth with a slab of stone and waits. There is no sound now except the faint hum of the fire. Lucius sits on a stool near the wall and rubs the flour from his hands. He takes a drink of water from the jug and leans back, listening to the muffled quiet. Above him, the floorboards creak. The apprentice stirs awake, muttering softly, then falls silent again. Lucius smiles faintly. He remembers his own apprenticeship, the endless mornings, the aching arms, the flour that clung to everything, even his hair. It was a difficult life, but he has long since stopped wishing for another. As the bread bakes, the air changes. It thickens with a warmth that feels alive. The scent begins as something faint, a whisper of grain and smoke, and grows until it fills every corner of the room. It is a smell that calls to memory, older than any empire. Wheat, earth, and heat, transformed. Lucius rises and opens the oven. A wave of warmth spills out, carrying with it the sweet, nutty fragrance of the loaves. Their crusts have turned deep gold, cracked and blistered. He slides them out one by one and sets them on the table to cool. Steam rises gently into the air, curling in the lamplight. Outside, the city is waking. He can hear footsteps now, the shuffle of slaves fetching water, the call of a vendor down the street, a child's laughter, faint but clear. Rome is stretching itself awake. Lucius turns to prepare the next batch. There will be several rounds before midday, each one mixed, shaped, baked, and sold in quiet rhythm. His apprentice, now fully awake, appears at the stair, a boy of perhaps 14, thin, with hair the color of sand. He yawns and ties his tunic hastily. Lucius nods toward the flour bin, and the boy begins to sift. No words are needed. The day has begun. The apprentice hums softly under his breath, a tune learned from the street musicians who play near the market. Lucius lets it fill the silence for a while. It is not unpleasant, the steady movement of hands, the rhythm of work, and the low hum blend into something almost like music. When the second batch is ready for baking, Lucius lets the boy take the peel. He watches, correcting the angle of his wrist, showing him how to slide the bread gently so the dough doesn't collapse. The boy listens, nodding, his expression serious. Lucius remembers being like that, wanting so much to prove capable. Now, he is patient. There is no rush. Mastery comes slowly, like dough rising in its own time. The light through the doorway grows brighter. It falls across the table, illuminating the fine dust of flour in the air, every particle glow for a moment, drifting lazily before disappearing into the warmth. The city's morning chorus is gathering strength. The clatter of hooves, the murmur of people, the faint clang of metal as shopkeepers open their stalls. Yet inside the bakery, time feels different. The noise is distant, softened, as though the thick stone walls hold it at bay. This is Lucius's world. Small, measured, steady. As the last loaves of the first batch cool, he begins to arrange them in neat rows on wooden trays. Each tray will be carried to the counter that opens to the street, ready for the first customers. The bread is still warm, steam lifting from the cracks in the crust. The smell escapes through the doorway, drifting into the lane. Soon people will follow it, drawn as they always are, half awake, hungry. For now, there is only this moment, the quiet between the end of night and the full arrival of day. Lucius stands for a long time, resting his hands on the table, watching the light grow. The fire hums softly, the bread cools, and the city, vast, ancient, indifferent, breathes around him. He does not think of the emperors or the Senate or the battles being fought in distant provinces. Those belong to another world. Here, the only thing that matters is that the next loaf will rise as it should, that the oven will hold its heat, that tomorrow he will wake again before dawn and begin anew. This is his life. It is not grand, nor remarkable, nor remembered in any scroll, but it is steady, honest, and necessary, and in the slow rhythm of his work, there is a kind of peace, the peace of something unchanged by time. As the sun finally breaks over the rooftops, Lucius wipes his hands on his apron and steps toward the open door. The first rays of light strike the cobblestones, gleaming faintly. He watches the city wake, the silhouettes of people moving in the distance, the call of a bird, the rustle of a cart turning a corner. Then, quietly, he returns to his work. There are more loaves to make, and the day has only just begun. The first breath of morning has found its way through the alleys. Light settles over the rooftops, soft and golden, creeping down the walls until it touches the narrow street in front of Lucius's Taberna. The mist thins and rises, curling like smoke above the stones. What was moments ago the private world of a single baker is now beginning to open into the rhythm of the city. Lucius stands behind the counter that faces the lane. The shutters are drawn back, letting in a slow wash of daylight. The warm scent of bread drifts outward, carried on the faint morning breeze. It mingles with the smells of the street, damp stone, olive oil, dust, and the faint bitterness of smoke from the nearby brazier. This fragrance is the city's quiet invitation to wake. He arranges the fresh loaves in a simple display, round ones for families, flat ones for travelers, small rolls for those who can spare only a coin or two. The steam still rises from their crusts, disappearing into the sunlight. He wipes his hands on his apron and waits. It does not take long. From the far end of the street, footsteps begin to echo, soft, hesitant, the sound of sandals on uneven stone. A woman appears first, carrying a woven basket under her arm. Her shawl is pulled tight against the morning chill, and her breath leaves pale traces in the cool air. She nods to Lucius, no words needed, and he selects a loaf still warm from the oven. The exchange is simple: one small coin, one loaf, and a faint smile of thanks. Then she is gone, her figure fading into the brightness beyond the corner. More come after her. A boy sent by a tavern, a laborer with flour already on his hands from another bakery, an old man who buys the same round loaf every morning, and always comments on the weather even when it never changes. Their conversations are short and quiet. No one lingers, each has their place to be before the city fully stirs. Across the lane, a door creaks open. A grocer sweeps the threshold of his shop. Farther down, a water seller adjusts the strap of his buckets and begins his steady call. The city is waking, not in a rush but in layers, sound by sound, gesture by gesture. The baker's street becomes a narrow artery in the vast body of Rome. Lucius watches as the light shifts higher. It spills across the rooftops and reflects from the polished bronze of a lamp hanging from a nearby wall. Children appear now, sleepy-eyed, chasing each other down the lane. The first cart of the day rumbles past, its wheels grinding against the stones, leaving behind the scent of hay and mule sweat. A baker's morning is long, but in this moment, he feels the small joy of belonging. His work folded neatly into the life around him. He takes a piece of bread for himself, breaking it slowly with both hands. The crust is firm, the inside soft and pale. He eats without hurry, watching the street, each movement out there. A shutter opening, a broom sweeping, a neighbor calling out, feels familiar, almost ritualistic. Rome does not wake with surprise. It rehearses the same slow rising each day, a performance that has been repeated for centuries. A pair of young apprentices from a nearby workshop stop at his counter. Their tunics are stained with dye, blue and red. They laugh quietly as they pay, arguing about which of them will carry the bread back to their master. Lucius smiles. He remembers being that age, tired before the day even begins, but certain that the world was wide and waiting. The sun climbs higher, and the sounds of the forum begin to reach even this side street. Faint, distant voices, the clang of a blacksmith, the hollow ring of a hammer somewhere far away. Pigeons settle on the roof of the Taberna, cooing softly as if to mark the arrival of daylight. Lucius lifts his head, listens for a moment, then returns to his work. There is dough waiting to be shaped for the midday batch. Each task arrives quietly, one after another, until the hours blur together in their sameness. As the morning lengthens, the pace of the street shifts again. The early customers, the servants and the poor, have gone. Now come the merchants, the clerks, the messengers in neat tunics carrying sealed tablets. They buy bread not only for hunger but for routine. To break bread in Rome is to begin the day. Lucius greets them all with the same nod, the same measured tone. There is comfort in the predictability of it. Between customers, he steps out from behind the counter. The sunlight has reached the middle of the lane now, bright enough to warm the stones underfoot. He stands there for a moment, stretching his arms, breathing the air that carries the mingled smells of Rome: bread, oil, smoke, sweat, life. He looks down toward the end of the street, where the crowd thickens near the market. There are sellers setting out their wares, baskets of figs, jars of honey, piles of garlic. He can hear the low murmur of bargaining already beginning. The voices rise and fall like a tide. He steps back inside. The bakery feels dim after the brightness outside. The fire has quieted, but the heat still radiates from the oven's walls. He adds another stick of wood and watches the small flames catch. The apprentice is at the table again, dusting it with flour, rolling dough into even shapes. Lucius nods his approval. The boy has learned quickly. His hands are steadier now, his movements more confident. They work in silence for a time. The rhythm of kneading, folding, and shaping fills the space. The noise of the city becomes a background hum. Steady but distant, Lucius finds a kind of meditation in it. Each press of the hands, each turn of the dough, follows the same slow cadence. It is work that asks nothing more than patience. From time to time, a voice calls from the street, someone asking if the next batch is ready, a neighbor greeting them through the open door. Lucius answers softly, his tone calm, and even, there is no need to shout here. The walls of the lane carry sound gently, as though protecting it from the world beyond. He remembers stories his father told him about the city before the great fires, when the bakeries stood closer to the heart of Rome, near the Forum. Back then, bakers were part of the city's guilds, bound by rules and regulations about the price and weight of every loaf. Even now, centuries later, those old habits persist, a quiet discipline handed down like a recipe. Lucius has never questioned it. To bake bread is to serve something larger than oneself, the hunger of an entire city. The morning stretches toward midday, the shadows shorten, the air grows warmer. Lucius and his apprentice move with the steady efficiency that comes only from repetition. They speak little, each knowing what the other will do next. When the next round of loaves is ready, they slide them into the oven and wait, leaning against the wall, letting the heat wash over them. Outside, the lane is no longer empty. Vendors pass with carts, their wheels rattling. Children chase the pigeons that gather around crumbs near the curb. A woman sits on a doorstep shelling beans, her fingers moving in time with a tune she hums softly. The life of the street has fully awakened now, but its energy is still gentle, unhurried. Rome does not rush, it unfolds. Lucius steps back to the counter and looks out once more. He sees the same faces he saw yesterday, and will likely see tomorrow. He takes comfort in their sameness. In a city where emperors change and fortunes rise and fall, the faces of his customers remain constant. Bread binds them all, the senator's servant, the craftsman, the child. For a few moments each morning, they all meet at his counter, equal in their need for the same simple thing. He thinks about that sometimes. How much of the world turns on hunger, and how much peace comes from the act of feeding it. He does not say these thoughts aloud. They live quietly in the back of his mind as he counts coins or lifts loaves from the oven. By the time the sun stands high above the rooftops, the street has reached its full voice. Everywhere there is motion, bargaining, laughter, the clang of metal, the cry of a hawker selling figs. The noise does not bother him. To Lucius, it is a kind of reassurance. The city is alive, the bread is baked, the day is as it should be. He closes the shutters halfway to keep the worst of the heat out and returns to his table. The apprentice has fallen into the same quiet rhythm. Their shadows move slowly across the floor as the light shifts. When at last the final batch of the morning is done, Lucius wipes his hands, sets aside the paddle, and stands in the doorway once more. The smell of bread has faded into the larger scent of the city. He watches the street, so full now that it feels almost like a river, carrying everything forward. For a brief moment, he allows himself stillness. He listens to the hum of life around him, to the overlapping sounds of work and talk, the low murmur of thousands of unseen lives moving through their own small routines. This is Rome, he thinks. Not the marble of the palaces, not the banners or the speeches, but this, the quiet persistence of ordinary people beginning another ordinary day. He takes a slow breath and returns to his bench. The next part of the day will come soon enough. The heat of noon, the slower hours when even the air seems to rest. For now, he works in peace, surrounded by the steady heartbeat of the waking city. Midday heat. By noon, the light has hardened, and the air inside the taberna grows heavy. The morning's freshness has gone, replaced by a still warmth that presses against the skin. The oven's fire, once comforting, now feels almost too close, its breath thick and unrelenting. Outside, the street blurs in the shimmer of heat, and the noises that filled the air hours earlier begin to fade into a slower rhythm. Even Rome, fast and restless, pauses beneath the midday sun. Lucius moves more slowly now. The sleeves of his tunic are rolled high, his forearms dusted white with flour. Sweat beads along his temples and darkens the fabric at his back. Each motion, kneading, shaping, turning, is deliberate, measured, not out of laziness, but from the understanding that nothing in this heat can be hurried. The dough itself demands patience. It rises differently now, slower, softer. He knows this without needing to think about it. A lifetime of mornings and noons has taught him how the air changes everything. From the half-closed shutters, thin bars of light stretch across the floor, illuminating particles of flour suspended in the air. They drift like pale dust motes, slow as sleep. The apprentice sits on a low stool near the doorway, fanning himself with a piece of papyrus, his eyelids heavy. Lucius lets him rest. There is little to do until the next batch cools. The city itself has entered its quiet hour. Beyond the bakery, the sounds of Rome have dimmed to a hum. The vendors at the corner have pulled cloth shades over their stalls. A donkey tied in the alley flicks its tail lazily, its hooves shifting against the warm stones. Even the pigeons have retreated into shadow. Only the distant splash of a fountain breaks the stillness, its rhythm steady and hypnotic. Lucius takes a jug from the shelf, pours a measure of cool water into a shallow bowl, and drinks from his cupped hands. The water tastes faintly of clay and minerals, carried from the aqueduct that snakes above the rooftops. For a moment, he closes his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, the world feels timeless, a space suspended between hours. He can almost hear the faint crackle of the fire beneath the bread, the muted heartbeat of the city around him, On a small stool by the oven rests his midday meal: a piece of cheese, a handful of olives, and a heel of bread from the early batch. He eats without hurry, breaking small pieces, chewing slowly, tasting the salt and smoke that linger on his tongue. It is not a feast, but it is enough. He has never sought more. In a city of marble and ambition, contentment can be its own quiet rebellion. As he eats, his thoughts drift outward, following the heat as it shimmers through the narrow streets. He imagines the others at their midday pauses. The stonemason leaning against his wall, eyes half closed beneath his cap. The washerwoman by the river, her hands motionless in the current. The soldiers stationed by the gate, their armor too hot to touch, staring at the horizon with dull patience. Each of them caught in the same suspended moment, waiting for the hour to pass. It is as though the whole city shares a single breath, long, slow, and silent. The apprentice shifts, yawns softly, and looks toward the doorway. Outside, a cart rattles past, its driver shielding his eyes with one arm. The wheels clatter briefly, then fade. Lucius nods to the boy. "Fetch some wood," he says gently, his voice low, unhurried. The apprentice rises and steps into the light, blinking against it, before disappearing around the corner. His footsteps echo faintly between the walls. Left alone, Lucius listens. The bakery breathes, the faint crackle of cooling bread, the whisper of heat escaping from the oven's mouth. He thinks of his father's workshop, long gone now, and the sound it made at this hour. Always the same sigh of fire and air. There is comfort in repetition, in knowing that what he does now is not so different from what was done generations before. The tools change little, the recipes not at all. What endures is the gesture, hand pressing into dough, hand lifting the paddle, hand breaking bread. He stands and steps toward the doorway, leaning against the frame. The light outside is blinding, almost liquid in its intensity. He can see the curve of the street where it bends toward the market. The flags above the tavern hang limp. Farther down, a pair of children sit in the shadow of a wall, drawing shapes in the dust with sticks. Their laughter is faint, fragile against the heat. The apprentice returns with an armful of wood, his face flushed. Lucius helps him stack it neatly by the oven, each piece placed with quiet precision. They do not speak. There is no need. The rhythm of shared work carries its own language, one of glances and gestures, of breath and timing. When the wood is arranged, Lucius adds a few small branches to the embers, coaxing a low flame back to life. The smoke curls upward in thin ribbons, tracing the air like ink in water. As the fire strengthens, the scent of baking returns, mingling with the dry heat of the room. Lucius feels the faint stir of appetite again, though not for food. It is the hunger for motion, for purpose. Even in stillness, his hands long for the dough, for the slow craft of creation. He dusts the table and begins again. Each movement, stretching, folding, shaping, feels almost like prayer. In this simple ritual, time loses its edge. The hours slide past quietly. Outside, the sun begins its slow descent, though the heat lingers stubbornly, pressed deep into the stone. A few customers appear at the threshold, their shadows long against the ground. They come softly, voices hushed by the weather, and Lucius greets them with the same steady calm. He wraps their loaves in cloth, passes them across the counter, accepts their coins. Each exchange is brief but polite, a small thread in the day's tapestry. Between customers, he watches the shifting light. It falls differently now, warmer, redder, touching the walls with a faint glow. Dust motes turn to sparks in the air. The apprentice, drowsy again, hums to himself. A tuneless sound, barely audible, yet somehow fitting. Lucius lets it be. It reminds him of the songs his mother used to hum at the same hour, when the day began to fold into quiet. He steps outside again, wiping his hands on his apron. The air is still hot but softer now, as though the city has exhaled. From nearby windows drift the smells of other meals: lentils, garlic, roasted fish. Somewhere, a lyre plays, its faint notes floating between the buildings. The music is not loud or perfect, but it carries through the air like memory. Lucius listens without smiling, only breathing in rhythm with the tune. He looks up at the sky above the rooftops. The blue has deepened, touched by a pale haze that hints at evening's approach. For a baker, the day is marked not by hours but by loaves, by what has been baked, cooled, and sold. He counts them quietly in his mind, satisfied. There is still more work to do before nightfall, but the hardest part is behind him. The apprentice brings him a jug of water, and they share it, passing it back and forth in silence. Each sip tastes faintly of dust and sun. When they finish, Lucius sets the jug aside and leans against the doorway once more. The street has begun to stir again. Gently, cautiously, shadows lengthen. People move with purpose now, their midday drowsiness fading. Rome, it seems, is waking for a second time. Lucius watches them, feeling a quiet satisfaction. There is something beautiful in this cycle. The rise, the stillness, the rise again. A baker's life follows the same pattern. Each day begins in darkness, warms to labor, pauses in stillness, and fades again to rest. Nothing grand, nothing heroic, yet utterly complete. He closes the shutters part way, letting in just enough light to see by, and returns to his bench. The oven hums softly, steady as breath. The boy resumes his work beside him, rolling small rounds of dough for the evening customers. The rhythm returns. The soft thud of hands, the faint creak of wood, the hiss of air against fire. Outside, the heat begins its slow retreat, leaving behind the faint sweetness of cooling stone. Lucius pauses once, wiping his brow, and looks toward the far end of the street where the marketplace glows faintly in the lowering sun. He can see the silhouettes of people folding awnings, closing stalls, gathering the remains of the day. The world, he thinks, is built on these small acts of ending. Not the grand finales of history, but the quiet gestures that bring each day to rest. He returns to his work, and as his hands move, the light fades further. The fire burns low, the loaves swell and brown, and the heat that once pressed upon the room now feels almost gentle. The silence grows deeper, filled only by the sighs of cooling bread and the muted hum of a city preparing for night. In this hour, everything feels balanced: labor and rest, heat and shadow, hunger and satisfaction. Lucius breathes it in. He does not speak, does not think of tomorrow. He simply works, the world around him softening into the golden haze of evening. The city will wake again, and he will rise before it, but for now, in the stillness of the waning day, surrounded by the smell of warm bread and the slow pulse of fire, he belongs wholly to this moment, the quiet center of Rome's unending rhythm. The heat has finally begun to loosen its hold. By late afternoon, the light that once burned white now softens to gold, falling gently across the worn stones of the street. The air carries a faint coolness, not yet the chill of night, but a promise of it. A quiet relief after the long wait of the sun. In the taberna, the fire burns lower, the oven's mouth glowing like the last ember of a long day. Lucius moves through the familiar haze of warmth and shadow. The smell of baked bread still lingers, sweet, earthy, and comforting. He has finished shaping the last of the dough. Now he waits. There is patience in waiting, the same kind that baking teaches. The world will unfold in its own time, whether he rushes or not. Outside, the street is changed once more. The noise of the day, the shouting of vendors, the clatter of carts, has softened into conversation. People move slower now, their steps lighter, their faces easier. Servants carrying baskets, children returning home, a musician idly tuning his lyre near the corner tavern. All pass in a rhythm that feels almost musical. Rome at evening does not end. It exhales. Lucius leans against the doorframe, wiping his flour-covered hands on his apron. The air outside is tinted with smoke and spice, oil frying, onions cooking, the faint sweetness of wine. It blends with the scent of his bread, a mixture that belongs entirely to this hour. He watches a group of young men walking by, their laughter low and steady, their sandals slapping softly against the stones. One of them glances toward the bakery and raises a hand in greeting. Lucius nods in return, his expression calm, almost content. The apprentice is still at the table, quietly dusting off the last traces of flour. His movements have slowed. His energy, once clumsy and eager, has been replaced by the careful grace of fatigue. Lucius does not speak to him. There is no need. The silence between them is not heavy. It is familiar, the silence of shared work. He goes to the oven, pulls out the final batch, and sets it upon the cooling board. The loaves are smaller now, meant for the evening customers, those who come on their way home, carrying bread to their families or to the taverns that fill the neighborhood with laughter and smoke. Each loaf cracks softly as it cools, releasing a faint hiss of steam. Lucius listens to it like a song he has heard all his life. He slices one open, testing its crumb, and places a small piece in his mouth. The flavor is rich, the perfect balance of smoke, salt, and grain. It tastes of the day itself, labor and patience, fire and time. He takes another bite and sets the loaf aside, satisfied. The apprentice steps outside for a moment, leaning against the wall. The sun sits low now, resting just above the rooftops. It turns the whole street to amber. Every wall, every face, every grain of dust glowing softly in its light. Shadows stretch long across the stones, overlapping like dark water. For a few moments, the whole world seems to hold its breath. Lucius watches it quietly. This hour has always been his favorite. It carries no urgency, no noise. It is the stillness between effort and rest, between hunger and satisfaction. The city seems at peace with itself, and so is he. From the nearby tavern, a murmur of conversation drifts through the air, broken now and then by a burst of laughter. Someone plucks at a stringed instrument, the sound uneven but warm. The melody floats down the lane, mingling with the faint crackle of oil and the rhythmic call of a peddler selling roasted chestnuts. The sounds are distant, softened by the approaching dusk. Lucius returns inside and begins to tidy the workbench. He brushes the flour into a small pile, wipes the wooden surface clean with a damp cloth, and arranges his tools neatly. Paddle, knife, rolling pin, all placed in their accustomed order. It is a small ritual, but one that carries the quiet satisfaction of completion, not the end of the day, but the easing of it. The apprentice comes back in, carrying a small oil lamp. He sets it on the counter and lights it. The flame flickers for a moment before steadying, casting a circle of golden light that dances across the walls. The bakery changes again, from a place of labor to one of calm. In the gentle glow, the loaves take on a soft sheen, the air thick with the warmth of grain and fire. Customers arrive slowly now. A woman in a green shawl buys 2 loaves for her family, her voice low and kind. An older man with a walking stick stops by, not for bread but to speak for a moment. He tells Lucius that the evening feels cooler than yesterday, that the wind smells of the sea. Lucius listens, nods, and offers a small smile. Such talk has no purpose but companionship, and that is enough. A pair of children appear next, clutching a few small coins between them. They speak at once, voices tumbling over each other in excitement, asking for the smallest loaf still warm. Lucius finds one, cuts it in half, and gives them both a piece. They thank him through mouthfuls of bread, their faces lit by the glow of the lamp. He watches them leave, their laughter fading into the growing dusk. The street grows dimmer by the minute. The sun slips lower, touching the edge of the rooftops, and then disappears. The last light of day lingers briefly, a faint, rosy afterglow that seems to hover in the air before surrendering to the blue of night. Oil lamps flicker to life one by one along the street, their flames trembling in the soft wind. Shadows deepen, and the sounds of the city change once again. The market's clamor has faded now. In its place comes the distant rhythm of footsteps, the murmur of families gathering around evening meals, the calls of vendors selling what remains of the day's produce. Somewhere, a dog barks, then falls silent. From another street, the low chant of a priest rises briefly before being swallowed by the hum of night. Lucius steps outside once more, stretching his arms. The air has cooled enough that the warmth of the bakery feels comforting again. He looks up. Above the rooftops, the first stars are beginning to appear, faint, trembling points of light against the fading blue. He knows that in an hour, the sky will be filled with them, scattered like flour across a dark table. He stands there quietly, listening. From inside the taberna comes the soft crackle of the dying fire. Behind him, the apprentice moves about, counting loaves, closing jars, sweeping the floor. Their movements blend into the calm rhythm of evening work. Nothing hurried, nothing wasted. A neighbor passes by, nodding as he goes. Lucius returns the gesture. They have never exchanged more than a few words. But after years of living on the same street, that simple nod carries the weight of familiarity. In Rome, one need not speak to be known. Shared silence is its own kind of language. He goes back inside and takes a moment to check the oven, making sure the fire has settled to embers. The glow is soft and steady. He leaves the door open just a little to let the warmth breathe into the room. Then, for the first time all day, he sits down. The bench is rough beneath him, the wood smooth where years of use have worn it down. He rests his hands on his knees and simply listens, to the faint ticking of cooling loaves, to the hush of the street outside, to the hum of his own tired breath. The apprentice sits across from him, silent as well. There is no need for words. The day's work has spoken for them. They share a quiet moment, not of exhaustion, but of peace. In the still air, the lamp flame wavers gently, painting both of their faces in golden shadow. After a while, the boy rises, gathers his things, and prepares to leave. Lucius nods, dismissing him with a few soft words. Go on. Get your rest. The apprentice hesitates, smiles faintly, and steps out into the street, the small flame of his own lamp flickering as he walks away. Lucius watches him go until the light disappears around the corner. He remains seated, alone now in the quiet taberna. The room feels larger in the silence, the shadows deeper. He reaches for a loaf, one of the unsold ones, and breaks it in half. He eats slowly, savoring it. It is a simple act, yet there is something sacred in it, as if the bread carries the memory of the day within it, every breath, every motion, every hour baked into its crust. Outside, the street has fallen almost silent. A few voices linger, a few footsteps echo, but most have retreated indoors. The city rests again, preparing for another dawn, another rising, another rhythm. Lucius chews his last bite, brushes the crumbs from his lap, and looks toward the doorway. The light from the street lamp spills in just enough to draw a soft line across the floor. He leans back slightly, closing his eyes for a moment. The faint warmth of the oven still touches his face. The scent of baked bread lingers, mingling with the night air that drifts gently through the open door. He breathes deeply, the air of labor and rest, of ending and beginning. It feels familiar, eternal. He does not think of tomorrow, though it will come as it always does, early, dark, quiet. For now he lets himself drift in the peace of the hour, surrounded by the hum of a city that never truly sleeps, yet somehow still finds its calm. Rome continues outside, soft, endless breathing, and in the heart of it all, one small taberna glows like an ember against the night. Nightfall in the city. The city exhales as the last light fades. The sun has long slipped behind the horizon, leaving a gentle blue in its wake. Shadows stretch and merge, folding the streets into themselves. The air, cooled by the departing heat, carries the faint scent of stone, dust, and evening fires. Night arrives quietly, with no rush, as though the city has been waiting all day for this gentle pause. Lucius steps to the doorway, surveying the street one last time before closing the shutters. The glow of a few oil lamps flickers against the walls, tracing long, soft lines across the worn stones. A child hurries home, clutching a bundle of small possessions, perhaps a toy or a bit of bread from the market. A dog curls beneath a doorway, its chest rising and falling with the rhythm of sleep. Even the pigeons have gone silent, their wings folded against the eaves. Inside, the taberna has grown still. The oven's warmth lingers faintly, a gentle pulse that hums in the quiet air. The loaves from earlier in the day rest on their racks, their crusts darkened and firm, waiting only to be eaten tomorrow. Lucius moves slowly, gathering what remains of the workbench tools, brushing away stray flour with deliberate care. The ritual of tidying is unhurried, each motion measured, precise, almost reverent. He stops for a moment to listen. Outside comes the faint murmur of distant voices, the low creak of a shutter in a neighboring street. From far away the river moves softly, a constant undercurrent beneath the city's quiet breathing. Even the night seems alive with subtle motion, a slow heartbeat of existence felt rather than heard. The apprentice has long since departed, and Lucius now walks to the small stool by the doorway. He sets down a jug of water, lifting it slowly to drink. The liquid tastes faintly of stone, cool and grounding. He closes his eyes briefly, savoring the calm that follows labor, the delicate relief of a day completed. Outside, the narrow street has changed again. The shadows are longer, deeper, and the lamps flicker in the gentle wind. Silhouettes pass occasionally. A servant returning home, a late traveler, a solitary figure heading toward the distant hills. Their movements are quiet, almost hesitant, as though the city itself has asked them to slow their pace. Lucius steps back into the warm glow of the taberna. He glances at the oven. Now only embers remain, glowing faintly. The faint hiss of cooling stone a lullaby in the stillness. The air smells faintly of yeast, smoke, and warmth. He inhales deeply. It is a comforting mixture, one that carries the memory of the day. The kneading, shaping, baking, serving, all of it distilled into a single lingering scent that wraps around him like a familiar cloak. The city outside hums softly, a chorus of subtle noises. Somewhere, a cat prowls along the roof, stepping lightly on the tiles. A fountain drips gently in a courtyard, each droplet a soft percussion in the night. The wind moves through the alleys, carrying whispers of conversations long ended, of markets emptied, of fires dying. Rome is alive, yet it sleeps. Lucius walks to the counter one last time. He touches the surface, smooth with years of use, worn in the places where hands have pressed, lifted, and rested. He remembers his father, his grandfather, the generations who have stood here before him. It is a quiet continuity, invisible to most, yet vital. The city held together by small, careful acts repeated day after day. The thought brings him a deep, meditative satisfaction. He moves to the doorway again, peering outside. The street is nearly empty now. The lamps flicker, sending long, warm shadows across the walls. The cool air brushes against his face, gentle and calming. A few stars appear overhead, pale and steady. He watches them without thought, simply observing, letting the quiet sink into him. Back inside, he sits on the bench, allowing his hands to rest in his lap. The room feels larger in the absence of movement. Shadows curl in the corners, and the faint light from the lamps glimmers off the polished tools and wooden surfaces. He breathes slowly, letting the day's fatigue flow out with each exhale. The hum of the city outside becomes a lullaby. Footsteps echo faintly, A door closes softly, a dog sighs in sleep. Even the wind seems to move in rhythm with the quiet pulse of life within the taberna. Lucius closes his eyes, allowing the warmth of the oven's last embers, the scent of bread, and the gentle rhythm of the city to fill his senses. He does not think of tomorrow. There is no hurry, no worry. For now, there is only this: the soft darkness, the lingering warmth, the quiet streets, the scent of baked bread, the simple meditative certainty of existence, measured in hours and loaves, light and shadow, labor and rest. Outside, the last of the evening lights flicker, and the city's deep blue folds into the night. Lucius remains seated, listening, breathing, absorbing the calm that the darkness brings. Each sound is subtle, a murmur, a rustle, a sigh, and yet it is enough. Rome sleeps gently, and so does the Taberna, held in the heart of it all, safe in its own quiet rhythm. The night stretches endlessly. Lucius remains in his chair, the room glowing faintly with the memory of the day's fire. He lets himself drift into a state somewhere between wakefulness and sleep. The city hums softly around him, carrying the sense of life continuing, unbroken as it always has. He is a small part of it, yet wholly present, wholly needed. The Taberna rests, the streets rest, Rome rests, and within the stillness the pulse of ordinary life continues, measured, steady, eternal, late night and the watchful city. The city has grown still. The air is cooler now, almost crisp, carrying the subtle scent of stone, distant water, and the faint smoke of hearths burning far away. Night has settled completely over Rome, folding the streets and buildings into soft shadows that move gently with the wind. Even the faint hum of life seems hushed, as though the city itself leans back to rest, watching quietly from its rooftops and balconies. Inside the taberna, Lucius moves softly. The apprentice has long since gone home, leaving him alone with the quiet rhythm of the night. The oven's embers have cooled to faint glows, and the loaves rest silently on the racks, their warmth now gentle, comforting. Lucius steps lightly, careful not to disturb the lingering aroma of bread that clings to the air like memory. Every surface bare trace of the day, a smudge of flour here, a small streak of oil there. The marks of work repeated countless times. He moves to the doorway and peers out. The street is almost empty. A lantern swings faintly on a corner, casting a soft glow across the stones. Shadows stretch long and thin, merging in the alleyways, and only the faint movement of a stray dog or a late traveler breaks the absolute quiet. The city at this hour feels alive in a different way, not in noise or bustle, but in stillness, in subtle motion, in the whispered presence of countless unseen lives. Lucius returns inside and sits at the workbench, folding his hands in his lap. He listens to the quiet, the faint crackle of cooling embers, the soft creak of the building settling, the delicate hiss of a draft moving through a small gap in the shutter. Even these small sounds are amplified in the stillness. They are the city's heartbeat at night, subtle, steady, unassuming, yet always present. The window above the counter frames the night sky. Stars glimmer faintly, scattered like tiny pinpricks of silver across a deep blue canvas. The moon hangs low, casting pale light that filters into the room, tracing the edges of jars, tools, and the wooden beams overhead. Lucius lets his gaze rest there, allowing the soft glow to wash over him. It is a quiet contemplation, a meditation, a gentle pause between the work of yesterday and the work of tomorrow. Outside, a cart rattles softly along a distant street. Its driver moves slowly, guiding the animal with care. The faint echoes carry up the alleyways, touched by the night air, softened and dulled. Lucius hears it but does not move. There is no need. He is part of this rhythm now, intertwined with the city's pulse, not separate from it. He stands, walking to the shelves to inspect the remaining ingredients. Sacks of flour, jars of oil, small baskets of dried herbs. Everything is in its place, neat, quiet, ready for the next day's labor. The repetition of order brings a deep satisfaction. In these simple arrangements lies the stability of life itself. Small acts, repeated, grounding the day, the week, the city. A faint breeze moves through the open doorway. It carries the sense of night, damp stone, distant river, herbs from neighboring shops, and the lingering sweetness of baked bread. Lucius inhales deeply, letting it fill his lungs, letting it center him. This is the gift of the night. Time to pause, time to notice, time to simply exist in the quiet spaces between hours. He sits again at the bench, breaking a small piece from one of the loaves. The bread is cool now, yet still rich in aroma. He eats slowly, deliberately, tasting the faint nutty sweetness of the grain, the earthy warmth of the crust. Each bite is a reminder of the day that has passed, of the work completed, of the lives touched quietly through the simple act of baking. The street outside has grown darker still. Lanterns flicker intermittently, their light dancing softly across walls and doorways. A cat moves silently across a roof. Its steps careful, deliberate. In the distance, the river flows, whispering along its stone channel, its movement steady and unchanging. Everything is small, measured, subtle. Everything is slow. Lucius closes his eyes for a moment. He listens to the city breathing, to the soft rhythm of night, to the quiet pulse of life continuing even in absence. It is not a restless energy. It is calm, patient, enduring. A reminder that even in darkness, the world continues to move, gently, without hurry. He rises and moves to the doorway once more, resting his hands lightly on the frame. The moon is higher now, casting faint silver across the street. Shadows mingle, long and soft, curling around corners and walls. A lone traveler moves in the distance, a small lantern shaking gently in his hand. Lucius watches until the figure passes from view, fading into the embrace of the sleeping city. Inside the taberna, he tidies the final crumbs from the workbench, brushing each grain carefully into a small pile. The room is empty but for the quiet pulse of the oven and the lingering scent of the day. Every tool is in place, every surface swept, every loaf resting. Order has been restored, the day has been honored. He sits one last time, letting the room's warmth and the city's quiet surround him. The air is thick with the memory of bread, of labor, of patience. He breathes slowly, deeply, feeling each inhalation, each exhalation. Time stretches, gentle and unbroken. A distant bell rings, signaling the hour, but it does not disturb him. The sound is soft, almost musical, a gentle punctuation in the night. He listens, lets it pass, lets it fade into the quiet. The city is patient, as he is patient. The taberna is patient, as he has learned to be patient. Outside, shadows shift with the wind. Lanterns flicker once, twice, and settle. The river murmurs faintly, carrying the echoes of the day far into the darkness. Lucius closes his eyes, allowing himself to drift in the calm. The night holds him, the city holds him, the work of generations surrounds him in silence. In this hour, nothing demands attention, nothing requires movement. The city sleeps, and he remains awake only in presence, in observation, in quiet reflection. The taberna is a sanctuary of warmth, light, and memory, a gentle beacon in the soft darkness of Rome. Time becomes unmeasured, moments stretch, then dissolve. Lucius breathes in rhythm with the faint pulse of the city, letting the night carry him slowly into its endless quiet. And in the heart of Rome, under the calm watch of moon and star, the taberna rests, the streets rest, the city rests, and somewhere, in the warm, lingering scent of bread, a baker feels entirely at peace. The night stretches endlessly over Rome, deep and calm. The streets are empty, yet alive with the soft rhythm of the city's hidden heartbeat. Lanterns sway gently in the faint wind, casting warm circles of light that tremble over uneven stones. Shadows pool and stretch, curling along the walls of houses, sliding beneath doorways, merging into alleys. Every surface holds a story, yet tonight those stories are whispered, subtle, quiet. Inside the taberna, Lucius moves slowly. The oven has long cooled, leaving only a faint warmth, gentle as a remembered breath. The loaves from earlier in the day rest on racks, their crusts firm, their smell lingering faintly in the room. He walks between them, hands brushing softly across the wood, touching the grain, remembering the shaping, folding, pressing that brought each loaf to life. Every motion is deliberate, slow, almost ceremonial. The city outside is alive in ways most do not notice. A cat moves along a roof, its paws careful, almost inaudible. A dog shifts beneath a doorway, sighing softly in sleep. The river murmurs faintly, carrying reflections of distant lamps and the first shimmer of moonlight along its gentle waves. From far away, the low rhythm of footsteps echoes against stone walls. A guard, a traveler, someone returning home. The night speaks in subtle gestures, in small movements, in quiet signals that life continues even in darkness. Lucius sits at the workbench, leaning forward slightly, hands folded in quiet reflection. He listens. The faint crackle of embers long cooled, the whisper of wind through the shutters, the soft settling of dust motes in the air. Every sound is amplified in the silence. It is a music of stillness, steady and soothing, and he lets it fill him, letting it center him in the middle of the sleepless city. A few late wanderers pass in the streets. Their steps are measured, careful, respectful of the night's calm. A lantern swings gently in a hand, casting a halo of light over the stones. Lucius observes from the doorway, watching shadows move, listening to the faint murmur of their voices. Each passer-by is a note in the city's nocturnal symphony, blending seamlessly with the subtle movements of rooftops, river, and wind. The room smells faintly of bread, softened by the night. It is a warm, grounding aroma that blends with the cooler air drifting through the open door. He breathes it in slowly, deliberately, letting the scent anchor him in the present. It carries the memory of labor, of time spent tending fire and dough, of patience poured into every loaf. The aroma is quiet, unassuming, yet profoundly comforting. Lucius rises, stretching his back gently, feeling the soft ache of muscles still aware of the day's work. He moves to the shelves, checking jars and tools, adjusting their placement. Everything has its place. Every motion is deliberate, precise. There is a meditative rhythm in these small acts, a quiet satisfaction in order restored, in continuity maintained. Outside, the wind moves through the narrow streets, lifting leaves and stray dust, carrying subtle scents. Wet stone from the river, the faint sweetness of olive oil, the distant smoke of hearth fires. A bat flits quietly above the rooftops, wings slicing through the cool air. A pair of owls call to each other from a distant grove, their voices echoing faintly, mysterious and melodic. Even the night seems conscious, attentive, moving in gentle harmony with the small, deliberate actions of Lucius and others like him. He returns to the bench, picking up a small piece of bread, breaking it slowly, deliberately. The crust is firm, the inside soft and aromatic. He tastes it quietly, savoring the texture, the warmth, the memory of hours of patient kneading and shaping. Each bite is a meditation, a moment to honor the work completed, the quiet hours survived, the life present even in the shadows. The city hums in subtle tones. A distant bell tolls softly, marking the hour. Somewhere a window opens and a faint voice drifts out, a conversation between neighbors, a story told quietly. The river continues to flow, constant and unhurried. The wind shifts direction, brushing along walls, stirring leaves, moving dust motes in thin, golden ribbons in the lamplight. Lucius closes his eyes briefly, letting the night envelop him. He hears the soft rustle of an alley cat, the faint scraping of a shutter in the breeze, the distant footfalls of someone passing along the street. Everything is gentle, measured, calm. There is no rush. Time seems to stretch indefinitely in the quiet pulse of these sleepless hours. He moves to the doorway again, resting his hands lightly on the frame. The lamp beside him flickers, sending long, soft shadows across the room. The moon casts pale silver light over the streets, highlighting subtle textures, the uneven stones, the worn walls, the curling leaves of an ivy vine. Lucius watches, breathing slowly, deeply, feeling the night settle around him like a soft cloak. Inside the taberna, he begins small tasks again, wiping surfaces, brushing away residual flour, aligning jars, checking the wooden paddles and knives. Every gesture is slow, deliberate, soothing, a meditation performed in motion. The night allows this kind of attention, a deep focused awareness that the busy day cannot afford. The sounds of the city become almost musical, the river flowing faintly, the wind brushing the rooftops, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft clatter of a cart long gone from memory. Each note is subtle, harmonious, part of the continuous quiet rhythm of life. Lucius breathes in time with it, letting the pulse of the city guide him, calm him, steady him. Hours pass unnoticed. The moon moves slowly across the sky, pale and silent. The streets remain empty for the most part, save for a few nocturnal wanderers, moving carefully, respecting the city's quiet. The taberna glows faintly, warm against the cool darkness outside. The smell of bread, the soft amber of the lamp, the faint heat of the embers, all anchor the space, giving it life in the absence of bustling day. Lucius sits again, hands resting in his lap, eyes half closed. He allows himself to be fully present, aware of sound, of light, of scent, of movement. The night continues around him, subtle and patient. He is awake yet calm. The city breathes with him. He breathes with the city. The hours deepen. Time is no longer measured by minutes or hours, but by the quiet unfolding of night, the shift of a shadow, the faint flicker of lamplight, the gentle settling of dust motes in the air. The taberna is alive with memory and warmth, a sanctuary in the dark, a witness to the sleepless life of the city. He moves to the door once more, watching the street. The moonlight glints faintly off the river, shimmering like liquid silver. The wind carries faint scents of stone, river, and distant fires. The city seems both infinite and intimate in these hours, a sleeping giant, yet alive with subtle motions, hidden rhythms, small lives continuing quietly through the night. Lucius feels the continuity of it all. Generations of bakers, neighbors, watchers, and wanderers have moved through these streets in the same quiet, sleepless hours. Each action, small and deliberate, has left its mark. Each presence has been part of the gentle, unhurried rhythm of life that flows through the city, endlessly, quietly, beautifully. And so, he sits in the warm glow of the taberna, awake, calm, present. The night stretches before him, unbroken, a soft river of shadow and sound. Every breath, every heartbeat, every movement feels part of a larger, enduring rhythm. Rome sleeps around him, yet it moves, alive in subtle, imperceptible ways. He is part of it, quietly, gently, steadily, a witness, a participant, a keeper of the night. The city will continue to breathe through these hours. The streets will remain quiet. The river will flow. The wind will whisper. Lucius will remain in his taberna, tending, observing, breathing, fully present in the gentle pulse of life that continues long after most have gone to sleep. In the sleepless hours, Rome is alive in ways that only patience and quiet attention can reveal. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light is a story, a memory, a pulse in the calm heartbeat of the night. Lucius breathes in the stillness, feeling it settles into him, carrying him deeper into the quiet, endless rhythm of the sleepless city. The city sleeps, you sleep. The night lingers gently over Rome. The streets are quiet now, still and soft under the pale glow of the moon. Every stone, every shadow, every whisper of wind seems to breathe slowly, patiently, deliberately. You can imagine the faint glow of a distant lamp, warm and steady, flickering softly. The scent of bread lingers in the air, comforting, grounding, gentle. A cat moves silently across a rooftop. A river flows endlessly. A bell tolls far away, soft and low. All of it blends into a quiet, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of a city wrapped in darkness. And now, you can let yourself drift into that rhythm. Feel the slow pulse of the night, soft and calm. Breathe in with it, and out with it. In and out. Each breath deepens your relaxation, carrying you further into stillness. The Taberna rests. The streets rest. The river rests. Even the stars seem to watch silently, gentle and steady. Everything moves slowly, patiently, without rush, without urgency. And you too can move with it. Feel the calm flowing through your body, from your head to your toes. Your shoulders relax, your jaw softens, your hands and feet grow heavy and warm. You are safe, you are steady, you are completely at peace. The city's quiet whispers surround you now. The soft sigh of wind, the faint shimmer of moonlight, the distant murmur of water. All of it guides you gently, slowly, deeper into a calm, steady sleep. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to hurry. The night holds you, the night soothes you, the night carries you, and as you drift, let the city's heartbeat become your own. Slow, gentle, enduring, safe, warm, calm. Rome sleeps. The Taberna rests, and now, so do you. The city exhales once more as the night deepens. Rome sleeps, or at least it seems to, beneath the faint silver glow of the moon. Streets that bustled with commerce now lie empty, stone cold and still, yet alive in ways only the quiet hours can reveal. Every shadow stretches, folds and drifts, slowly along walls, curling around corners, tracing the curves of doorways, the edges of rooftops, the worn stone of the streets. Inside the taberna, Lucius sits quietly. The oven has long cooled, its heat now a gentle memory resting in the room. The loaves of bread, baked and waiting for morning, exude a faint, comforting aroma, warm, earthy, slightly sweet. The tools of his labor lie in neat order, every paddle, knife, and wooden board in its place, worn smooth from years of hands that worked patiently, deliberately, lovingly. Lucius's hands rest in his lap. His gaze is soft, unfocused, observing the shadows as they move subtly across the walls. Night has its own rhythm, and he has come to know it intimately. There is a pulse in the silence, a subtle heartbeat in the dark. The wind whispers gently through the streets, carrying faint scents, the cool tang of river water, the warmth of hearth fires from distant homes, the earthy aroma of stone warmed by the day and cooled by night. Every sound is amplified in this stillness. The creak of a shutter, the soft shuffle of a cat along the roof, the distant murmur of someone returning home, even the faint dripping of a fountain carries meaning here, a slow percussion in the city's nocturnal symphony. Lucius breathes, slowly, deliberately. He inhales the quiet, the warmth, the scent, the soft light filtering through the windows. He exhales in rhythm with the night, letting it settle into his body, grounding him, steadying him, The taberna is more than a workspace now. It is a sanctuary of calm, a place where labor and life, presence and reflection, intertwine seamlessly. The hours stretch. Time loses its sharp edges and softens into a gentle continuum, measured not by clocks but by subtle movements. The shift of shadows, the flicker of a lantern, the slow settling of dust in the faint glow of light. Lucius moves through small tasks with care, aligning jars, brushing flour from surfaces, inspecting tools, adjusting racks. Every gesture is deliberate, unhurried, meditative. He is awake, yet entirely in harmony with the stillness around him. Outside, the city breathes in whispers. The wind sways the trees, stirring leaves in the courtyards. The river flows, reflective and soft, carrying the faint shimmer of distant lanterns. A dog sighs in its sleep, rolling slightly, curling closer to a doorway. Somewhere, an owl calls to its companion, a low, echoing note that drifts across rooftops and alleys. Even in darkness, Rome is alive, in the subtle, invisible ways of life that continues quietly when most are unaware. Lucius rises slowly, walking to the doorway. The lamp beside him flickers softly, sending long, gentle shadows that stretch and contract against the walls. He rests his hands lightly on the frame, feeling the cool night air brush against his skin. The streets are empty now, silent in the sense of movement, but rich with presence, the invisible lives of past hours, of night travelers, of the city itself breathing. There is a rhythm here that cannot be rushed, only observed, only absorbed. He closes his eyes briefly, letting the sounds and smells of night fill him completely. He listens to the river, to the faint wind, to the distant hum of the sleeping city. He feels the history that lingers in the stones beneath his feet, the walls around him, the very air that moves through the narrow streets. Every brick, every plank, every ripple of light or shadow carries memory, centuries of footsteps, hands, voices, quiet labor, gentle presence. The taberna seems to breathe with him, alive in the subtle warmth of embers long gone cold. The wood beneath his fingers feels warm from memory, smooth from repetition. The scent of bread lingers faintly, sweet and grounding, a tether to the day's work and the cycle of life that continues beyond him. He inhales, letting it settle into him, into his chest, into his very being. He exhales, releasing tension, releasing thought, releasing worry. Only presence remains, calm and steady, rhythmic and unhurried. Outside, the night deepens further. The moon moves across the sky, casting pale silver lines across the rooftops. The stars glimmer faintly, steady and constant, seemingly watching over the city with patient attention. A cat slips silently along a ledge, ears twitching, paws careful. A distant bell tolls low and faint, marking the slow, deliberate passage of hours. All is quiet, all is calm. Lucius sits again, letting the night enfold him completely. He observes the subtle glow of the lamp, the gentle sway of shadows, the faint dance of dust in the light. The city is asleep, yet awake in its own way. The taberna is still, yet alive with warmth and memory. Every corner, every surface, every shadow tells a story if one chooses to see it, to feel it, to breathe it in. He rises once more, walking slowly along the shelves. Every jar, every utensil, every paddle is aligned, a meditation in stillness and preparation. There is satisfaction in the small things, the deliberate placement of tools, the careful inspection of surfaces, the recognition of continuity across hours, days, generations. Each small action grounds him, keeps him tethered to the rhythm of the city, to the pulse of life that flows even when most sleep. The night stretches on. Time loses shape. Minutes, hours. They dissolve into gentle waves of quiet, of movement, of presence. Lucius remains in the taberna, moving when necessary, sitting when needed, breathing with the subtle pulse of the city around him. Every inhalation, every exhalation, is a communion with the stillness, a recognition of the gentle endurance of life that continues silently, patiently, beautifully. Outside, the river murmurs softly, reflecting the moonlight in gentle ripples. The wind carries faint scents from distant hearths, from olive groves, from markets long closed. An owl calls again, a soft, echoing note that resonates in the alleys. The city is alive, unseen and unfelt by most, yet profoundly present for those who pay attention. Lucius leans back on the bench, letting his hands rest in his lap. He closes his eyes and allows himself to simply exist, awake, present, calm, aware. He feels the pulse of the taberna, the subtle warmth lingering from the day's labor. He feels the rhythm of the streets, the quiet presence of the river, the soft murmurs of animals, the distant whispers of life moving slowly in the dark. All of it blends into a gentle, continuous wave that carries him further into the night. The night is a teacher, patient and unhurried. It teaches attention, presence, care, calm. It reveals the hidden rhythms of the city, the unnoticed movements, the quiet acts that hold life together. Lucius absorbs it all, the warmth, the scent, the faint sounds, the shadows, and lets it settle into him. The lamp flickers once more, casting soft, dancing shadows. The embers glow faintly, a memory of warmth. The loaves rest on their racks, silent witnesses to the quiet passing of time. Every sound, every scent, every motion is gentle, deliberate, calming. The night is endless in its subtlety, infinite in its quiet lessons. He sits for hours, breathing with the rhythm of the city. He observes the slow pulse of life continuing in absence, the unseen, the unnoticed, the quiet. Rome sleeps, yet it moves. The taberna rests, yet it holds life in every corner. Lucius exists in harmony with all of it, a witness, a participant, a keeper of stillness. Time loses all meaning. The night is neither short nor long, it simply is. Shadows lengthen, shift, dissolve. The wind whispers, the river flows, the distant bell tolls softly. Every element is deliberate, slow, patient, rhythmic. Lucius inhales, exhales, moves, observes, sits. He exists fully, entirely, calmly. And in this final, gentle moment, the city's quiet presence, the warmth of the taberna, the faint scent of bread, the soft amber glow, and the deep, unhurried pulse of life remain. All is calm, all is quiet, all is still, yet alive. The city sleeps. Lucius rests in wakefulness. The night endures. Rome breathes softly, endlessly, patiently, and so does he.